Well, for further analysis, we're joined from Cairo by international relations expert Mohammed Atamawi. Good evening to you, sir, and welcome to Q News. And let me start by asking, are we here approaching the start of the second phase negotiations of the Gaza agreement by any means?
Thanks to you and your dear viewers. Absolutely, I think we are approaching from a very pivotal point, but such an approachment isn't on the simple meaning and even to start an easy negotiation or even an acceptable. So the first phase is to exchange the prisoners and the truce aren't going practically be completed unless we start in a speedy manner of the second phase as it is addressing what's going to happen the following day after the end of the war, such as the reconstructions. International and regional environment is present in open such a track as the continuation of the current situation is highly costly, including the international guarantors. Despite or having said that, there are no big hinders, and that the current approach is closing in a very complicated negotiation and not to uh, a guaranteed solution. As you all know, the crisis was a very sensitive and delicate arrangement of the first phase of the agreement, and the readiness of the parties in addressing the details of the second phase are more complicated and more influential on the strip. As I say, regional and international powers are trying to open such a trajectory, important and a political track. In return, there are internal complexities that make to move on to the arrangement of a final arrangement that will face some obstacles, indications that the conflicts between the two rivals, not only between two of them on the table, but even within the Israeli cabinet.
What do you think about the Israeli violations and the continuous strikes on Gaza, and how would that obstruct the agreement and reaching the second phase of the Gaza deal?
The, I, I, I agree with you. Very evidently, the Israeli obstacle is not on a theoretical a possibility, but it is an apportion to obstruction the Israeli making decision. The second phase is that are addressing some dossier the far right wing never wish to go through practically, including the ceasefire, even the conditions of the displaced people, the reconstructions, who is going to govern Gaza politically and administratively. So, realizing the freeze of the second phase means actually to end the war completely with respect to the Israeli occupation forces, and which means in the internal political landscape, I think even the members of the cabinet might ease means of more complexity, such as the systematic installment or even elevating the ceiling of demands by creating new conditions, and it is possibly to make some operational or some military operation to a pretext in freezing some negotiation. Israel is very much capable to hinder the second phase, as it represents an obstacle before the internal governance balances compared to an external development.
Mhm. Now, what do you have, or what's your comment on Netanyahu's decision to include Smotrich and Ben Gvir in the Israeli committee responsible for the second phase negotiations of the Gaza agreement?
This decision has a very significant political approach. Netanyahu is relentlessly wishes to stay in power in order to guarantee the continuation of its coalition and also to appease its members and joining the members of the far right wing in order to give him a sense of monitoring, also to transform the negotiation to an internal paper and to be a space of bidding or might hinder or distort the trajectory of such a decision by sending messages to the procurers by the participation of the extremist partner to indicate that the Israeli government aren't united and very much lean into a solid stance. Therefore, is minimizing more concessions. A presence of such figures within the room of making decision makes any progress of negotiation is subjected to red lines that make the second phase a subject of an internal disagreement before to have subject of a disagreement with the Palestinian side. Therefore, I can say that we are approaching of opening the second phase file, but it is accompanied of an internal political escalation by Netanyahu's step by including Ben Gvir and Smotrich that makes it a very strong signal that make the fate of the agreement is subject to his own political interests that aren't under the security guarantees. Such a step, I think it is make the things are more difficult. And as I said, the obstacles are going to be in place, and the potential of the Israeli decision to will infringe the core of the Palestinian cause, as they do not wish to have a very independent Palestinian state.